sentence, a lesson in love and self-worth. He came into my life at a moment I least expected. My heart had long stopped dreaming, and my mind was fortified with layers of defense. We met at a small seminar where people gathered to discuss books but ended up finding each other through a glance. He took the stage with a warm voice and a confident smile. I sat in the third row, quietly listening and taking notes, unaware that minutes after his talk, he'd approach me, invite me for coffee, and pull me into a string of sleepless nights filled with endless thoughts. Our first conversation wasn't long, but it was deep enough to make me feel safe. He wasn't rushed, cliched, or armed with the tired compliments men often use. He asked about my favorite book. I said, The Stranger, by Albert Camus. He smiled and said he'd read it during the loneliest summer of his life. I was surprised, perhaps because he didn't shy away from admitting loneliness. Someone so honest, I thought, couldn't be shallow. And so, I believed. I believed in his morning texts wishing me a good day. I believed in his gaze across the coffee table. I believed when he said, I feel at peace with you. One night, after a late movie, he held my hand as we walked down a quiet street. We didn't talk much, just listened to the sparse hum of traffic and our footsteps crunching dry leaves. I don't recall when I began to love him, but I vividly remember the night I decided to believe he loved me too. He came to my place with a bottle of red wine and that familiar smile. We had dinner, talked, and everything flowed naturally to a moment I thought we both wanted. No words of love were spoken, but in his eyes, I thought I saw something real, tender. I gave myself to him without hesitation, fear, or pressure, because I believed that when two people share deep stories, silent afternoons, and wordless glances, physical intimacy is just another way to connect more deeply. I fell asleep in his arms, feeling light and whole. The next morning, I woke early, quietly made coffee, and prepared a small breakfast. My heart brimming with joy, I imagined him waking and hugging me from behind, like in the movies. I hoped for a gentle word, a hint that he felt the same happiness. But no, he opened his eyes, checked his watch, and said, I have to leave early, urgent meeting. I nodded, swallowing the disappointment rising in my throat. He dressed quickly, not touching me again. Before leaving, he turned, smiled, and said, Thanks, last night was great. That was all. A line I'd heard in films, but never imagined would be the one to shatter my dream of love. He left, no texts, no calls. 1 day, 2 days, a week. I waited. I tormented myself. Was I too easy? Did I misread the signs? Did I dream too much about a man who was merely interested? Friends told me not to overthink, that he was probably busy, that men aren't always good at expressing themselves. But deep down, I knew if someone wants to, they'll find a way. If they don't, they never intended to. I checked my phone each morning, stared at his name in my contacts, then set it down. I lacked the courage to delete it, but also the folly to keep reaching out. His silence wasn't the clearest answer, it was the cruelest. Not because he left, but because he left so effortlessly, as if that night never happened. I wondered, if I were him, would I treat someone who'd slept beside me that way? No. To me, the body isn't just flesh, it's a gateway to trust, a signal of respect. I thought that giving sincerely would yield something worthy in return. But life doesn't run on emotions, and sex doesn't always equate to love. I began looking at myself differently in the mirror. No longer the confident, independent woman who knew what she wanted, but a bewildered girl, unsure why she felt so empty after everything. I didn't cry then, but at night, alone in the room where he'd slept, tears fell endlessly, not for him, but because I felt I'd lost a part of myself, the part that believed I was enough to be loved. The weight of silence. I don't know how many times I stared at my phone screen. His last message lingered 6 words. Thanks. Last night was great. No follow-up, no plans to meet, no hint of the romantic endings I'd seen in films. I clung to hope, a delayed text, a reasonable excuse, and a sudden return. But nothing came. He vanished without a goodbye, as if we'd never met. I spiraled. Did I do something wrong? Say something off? Was I not interesting enough for him to stay? I told a close friend. She looked at me for a long time and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. You just trusted the wrong person." I stayed silent, neither arguing nor relieved. The pain wasn't just his leaving. It was how he made me a stranger after seeing my truest self. I didn't blame him for not loving me. I blamed him for making me think I was loved. Some days, I smiled at colleagues, finished work like everything was fine. But at home, behind closed doors, an icy emptiness lingered, not from lacking a man, but from no longer recognizing myself. I'd thought I was rational, telling friends, sex can't replace love. Yet I was the one quietly dreaming, then quietly hurting. I couldn't blame anyone. I'd opened my heart, chosen to trust, stepped out of my defenses, and was left behind. He didn't text, but I saw him on social media checking in at new cafes, posting with friends, smiling brightly. That night was just a fleeting moment in his carefree adventure, folded away in a drawer he'd never reopen. Meanwhile, I lived with it not in memories of him, but in self-doubt. I compared myself, wondering why leaving was so easy for him. Was I not attractive enough? Was my body lacking? Was our intimacy only worth a thanks and an exit? One night, I dreamed I was chasing him down a long street. I called out. He turned but didn't stop, his gaze passing over me not cold or angry, but foreign. I woke, heart pounding, drenched in cold sweat, realizing the deepest pain isn't being left, but being forgotten, as if you never existed. I thought of countless women like me, hoping a night would spark a journey, only to receive silence cold, indifferent. They, like me, didn't ache from losing a man, but from losing faith in their own worth. I distanced myself from men who came after, not out of hatred, but to avoid that feeling again. I feared silence after greetings, tender looks without commitment, my heart softening at the wrong moment. The mirror's truth. I used to look in the mirror each morning and smile at myself. Not a magazine cover woman, but proud, stable job, independent, clear about my desires, unshaken by emotions. After that night, the mirror showed someone else, sunken eyes from sleepless nights, dry lips, pale skin. But what held me was my gaze bewildered, brimming with unanswered questions. I tried resuming normal life, work, meetings, coffee with colleagues. Outwardly, I was me. Inwardly, I was a puppet, moved by inertia, devoid of true drive. Passing the bookstore where we first talked, I stopped. A sharp pain gripped my chest. I turned away, walking fast, not because I missed him, but because I missed the version of myself before everything changed. I asked myself, why could one night derail me so I wasn't weak? I told myself my worth couldn't crumble over someone unworthy. The answer silenced me. I hadn't realized I could hurt so deeply. I'd thought sex was part of adulthood, that with connection and respect, it was just another expression of emotion. But I was wrong. I'd used sex to prove love, while he saw it as just one night. I didn't just lose an unformed romance. I lost the image of a woman who knew her value. Recalling his calm, light gaze that morning, I wasn't angry. I just felt naive. I remembered smiling at his simple text, preparing carefully for our dates, imagining a future he never considered beyond tomorrow. I thought I was strong, but I was just vulnerable beneath a veneer of resilience. I'd told friends, if we break up, I won't regret it. But this time, I didn't just regret, I was ashamed. Not to others, but to myself. I couldn't tell my mother. Couldn't meet my sister's eyes at dinner, not because they judge, but because I feared they'd see my fragility. I'd advised friends to love rationally, yet here I was, crying silently in my bedroom over a text that never came. I'd believed in independence, but now I craved someone to remind me I wasn't wrong to trust. No one came. I had to do it myself. I started writing not for him, but for me. Pages filled with questions, memories, and messages to myself. Don't judge yourself by someone's shallow dismissal. You're still worthy of kind love, even if he didn't see it. Giving yourself doesn't lessen your value. You just gave to the wrong person. I taped these to my mirror. Each morning, I saw them before my face. Slowly, my gaze softened, not because I forgot, but because I was learning to forgive myself. Building walls, seeking peace. I declined dates, flirty texts, coffee invites, suggestive workplace glances, not because I hated men, but because I wasn't healed enough to trust again. I feared quick familiarity, the way someone could be tender for weeks, then vanish by Monday. I feared repeating my mistake, reading too much into a gesture, dreaming too far from a look. I lived like an empty shell, busy, efficient, calm, but with locked doors inside, each tied to a memory, an unspoken word, a feeling of abandonment. Sometimes, seeing couples hand in hand on the street made my heart shrink, not from envy, but because I'd believed in that and was left empty-handed. One weekend, an old college friend invited me for a walk. We'd always clicked. He was mature, patient, and didn't pry into my past. He shared stories about work, family, travels, and life's small moments. I listened, smiled, but my heart was taut. When his gaze lingered, alarms rang. Be careful. Don't trust. When he texted, good night. I hesitated, avoiding sweet replies or showing too much. I didn't want to close off, but I feared picking up my pieces again. My friend said, you need to learn to love again. But how do you love when you haven't forgiven yourself for loving wrong? I'd thought defenses were negative, but they kept me upright. I set boundaries: no late night outings, no texting past hours, no meeting strangers twice in a week. I built rules like a fence around my heart. It was exhausting, but it felt safe. I stopped sharing my story not for fear of judgment, but because revisiting it stung, reminding me how vulnerable I'd been. Silence amplified my loneliness. Some nights I woke at midnight, not from nightmares, but from emptiness. I stared at the ceiling, then the empty side of the bed. I didn't want someone there, but I didn't want to be alone forever. A contradiction gnawed at me. I didn't need anyone, yet I didn't want endless solitude. I didn't want to open my doors, but I didn't want to live in a locked house forever. Then I realized the issue wasn't whether to love again, but that I'd forgotten how to love myself. A new reflection. One rainy afternoon, I entered a familiar cafe, sat by the window, ordered hot tea, and opened a book I'd bought weeks earlier, but never read, Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, recommended as a must-read for women. Its pages on female sexuality, emotions, and bodies stopped me cold. A passage hit me. Most women aren't sad because they had sex. They're sad because they don't understand why they feel empty afterward. My heart raced as if someone had voiced my deepest pain. I sat there, the world fading, recalling that night, the next morning, the brief text, the endless silence. I wasn't sad about losing him. I was sad because I didn't understand why I felt so worthless after something meant to be intimate and trusting. I'd blamed gender, society, him, but what haunted me was not understanding myself. I'd let someone else redefine my trust, emotions, and body's value, never pausing to ask, what do I truly need? I read on, the pages mirroring what I'd ignored. Physical closeness without emotional connection leaves a void. Women aren't wrong to desire, but they need to know what truly fulfills them. Connection, safety, respect. If you regret sex, it's not because sex is wrong, it's because your emotions weren't ready. For the first time in months, I stopped blaming myself. I wasn't wrong to love sincerely. I just hadn't learned to listen. to my body and heart clearly. I'd thought strength meant being tough, decisive, burying soft emotions. But true strength is facing yourself, your sadness, and saying, I need to heal. I wrote again, not self-reproach, but questions. What hurt me most in that story? Was I seeking love or filling another void in my soul? Next time I love, what's non-negotiable? I wrote, read, cried gentle tears, like shedding a burden. I saw life differently, not men as threats or myself as a victim, but as someone learning to love healthily. I didn't want to repeat that pain. If I love again, I want to give without excess, hope without haste, and never trade myself to keep someone. I want intimacy while holding my self-respect, the closeness without confusing desire with love. Above all, I want to look in the mirror the next morning and meet my own gaze without looking away. Starting small. I didn't seek a new man or pretend I'd moved on. I learned to love myself, bit by bit. I got a haircut, simple, not flashy, but it made me breathe easier in the mirror. I reorganized my room, swapping the bedsheets he'd slept on for crisp white ones, reflecting the clarity I sought within. I returned to yoga not to look better, but to hear my body. Each morning, I sat still for 5 minutes, no phone, music, or voices, just me. At first, it was a challenge, my mind buzzing with regrets and memories, but it became my day's most precious pause, a moment to be myself, unguarded, unperformed. I learned to forgive not him, but myself, for trusting the wrong person, for craving love so much I forgot I deserved more. I wrote nightly in a journal about small joys, a good tea, a great book, a rainless afternoon. I stopped seeing love as a goal, but as part of a larger journey to inner wholeness. One day, I ran into him at a work event. He shook my hand, his gaze polite, his smile neutral. For the first time, my heart didn't ache. I felt no sadness, no anger, just calm. I saw him as someone who'd crossed my path to teach me a costly lesson. Loving others begins with loving yourself. Intimacy doesn't guarantee emotional connection, and giving is my choice, but I can't force someone to cherish it. That night, I deleted his last text, not to forget, but to let go. I wrote on my mirror with a marker, I'm not healing because someone hurt me. I'm returning to myself whole, strong, and lovable as I've always been. I taped it to my desk. When tired, I read it, reminding myself, don't let someone who didn't see your worth make you forget how brightly it shines. I don't promise I won't hurt again, but I promise next time I love, it'll be with self-respect. I won't beg for love, trade myself, or shrink to be kept. I won't let anyone teach me I need to earn love. True love demands no conditions. One morning, I realized I no longer awaited text. Not because I closed my heart, but because I didn't define my worth by anyone's presence or absence. In the mirror, my new hair had grown slightly. Faint lines lingered by my eyes, but my gaze was, for the first time in ages, that of a woman at peace with herself. I no longer feared mornings alone, dodged questions about being single, or flinched at couples. I learned loneliness doesn't kill. but losing yourself to someone can. I was the girl who hoped one intimate night would spark lasting love. Now, I'm the woman who knows love begins with awareness, not fleeting thrills. I once feared people leaving. Now, I'm ready to let those who don't belong walk away without clinging or needing closure. I thought failing to keep someone meant endless emptiness. But I never lost anything. I just needed to return to myself, whole enough, a woman worthy of love, especially my own. I don't need someone to prove my value. I prove it by living honestly with my emotions, boundaries, and self-respect. I don't chase promises. I look for actions, consistency, respect, not just when someone wants something, but when I have nothing left to give. People will come and go, but no one will make me doubt my worth again. A call to courage. I used to think strength was not crying, not hurting, not showing weakness. Now I know true strength is daring to hurt and still rising, with clear eyes and a heart that doesn't doubt itself. I'll love again, maybe not today or next week, but someday, calmly and clearly. I won't give out of fear of loss, hold back from fear of pain, or love blindly. I'll simply love whole and aware, intimate without losing my way, trusting without naivety. If someone worthy enters my life, they'll come not to fill me, but to walk beside me, not to define me, but to write a new chapter where we don't heal each other, but grow healthy together. I hold my head high. I smile. I am me, and that's always enough. If you felt abandoned after a night meant to be intimate, cried silently, wondering what you did wrong, or lost faith in yourself because someone didn't cherish you, know this: you're not alone, and you're not wrong. In a rushed world where emotions are often dismissed and trust exploited, loving sincerely is never shameful. The greatest lesson isn't to stop loving, but to love awake, keeping a piece of your reason, self-respect, and inner safety. You deserve kind love, not fleeting desire, but true connection. You don't need to earn love, you're already whole, precious. If someone doesn't see that, their leaving is a gift. Thank you for hearing this story. If you saw yourself in these chapters, felt comforted, understood, or empowered, please subscribe to join us for more healing, awakening stories. Share this with a friend needing encouragement, a light amid confusion. Leave a comment. What did you learn from this story? We want to hear your voice. Every wounded heart deserves to love again, starting with itself.